Fiber optics or night sights? Which one is the best one? And then which one's the best one for you, right? In this video, we're going to talk about the differences and similarities between the two, the characteristics, the specific applications, and why, how can there be some overlap between the two sights, and what's really the best application for fiber optics versus night sights. So most of our guns come with some kind of sight. If you buy a new gun, it's probably going to come with some kind of polymer sight, especially if it's a Glock. If you have anything else like a SIG or a Smith or anything else, they may come with some kind of iron sight, right? Those iron sights may have anything from just white colored dots to tritium to fiber optic. And if you're buying an aftermarket gun, it could be all souped up and everything and tricked out. But regardless, you're going to have some kind of sights on there. And you have to ask yourself, are these sights the ones I want on this gun? Depending on what the application of that gun is. I think there's two kind of ways to break down the use of a gun. One, it's either on the range for just training or competition, sports shooting. The other one is for like EDC, home defense, self-defense type stuff, right? Can there be overlap? Can one gun kind of cover both of those roles? Yeah, of course. But most of us have more than one gun. So we like to kind of pick our favorite. That favorite may also be our range gun or vice versa. But if we do have more than one gun, for example, if you have a Glock 34 or a Glock 17, like the one I have here, I don't know if I want this to be my EDC gun. Could it be? Yeah, of course. But it's a little big to be an EDC gun. Maybe during the winter I could conceal it better. Then I have something like this where I have a 19X, right? This is a little easier to conceal, but it's still a full-size frame and I can still run it on the range, right? So the size of the gun or whatever, the round capacity of the gun, those all could kind of help determine what the use of the gun is. But, if it is strictly a range gun, then out of fiber optics and night sights or tritium sights, there is one that's a little bit better for that kind of application. And if it is strictly an EDC gun, then one of those actually plays a better role for that specific application. So in today's video, we're just going to talk about that. All right, so let's talk about the pros of fiber optic sights, right? So I already showed you my 19X. Here it is, a little closer. There's my 19X. I have some fiber optic fronts and rears. These are made by Warhite USA. You can kind of see they're right there. You see that kind of they're perforated so that light can come in. Same thing on the front. And I got red in the front and green in the back. Now, I'm not typically a fan of a 3-dot system, and I don't know how much of a fan I am of a 3-dot fiber optic system, but this has really grown on me. It's grown on me pretty well. I've learned to adapt to it. I shoot this gun on the range, probably the most out of all my other guns, and I've definitely kind of worked it in. I'm actually pretty decent with these sights. It's not hard to find that red fiber optic in front, and I like it. I like it, except the only thing you'll notice is that the front sight post is almost just as big as let me kind of get this to focus in. The front sight post is also just as big as like a regular front sight, right? And one of the pros of having a fiber optic front is that the fiber optic is small, which gives you a smaller aiming reference, which equals more accurate shots, more precise shots. Kind of like the one I have here on these warrants, right? So these are warrants. This is on my Agency 17. You can see how, even though, kind of get this to focus, you can see even though the front post is pretty decent size, the fiber optic itself is actually pretty small. So those are the two fiber sights I have. Actually, I have a couple more, but these are the ones that I want to use for the video to kind of describe what I'm talking about. But there's pros about fiber optics, right? Fiber optics, they're budget friendly. They're cheap. They're cost effective. You could probably pick up a nice set of fiber optic sights for about 60, 70 bucks. That's a pretty small chunk of change when you're kind of factoring in all the work that we do to a gun. Triggers and slide packages and frame stippling and all that stuff that we like to do to our guns. 60, 70 bucks is not much for a decent fiber optic sight. The other thing is, I already kind of mentioned it, right? Because it's fiber optic, it's a small rod. So it gives you, and it's also very bright. So it gives you the ability to quickly pick up that front sight post because it's small, it gives you the ability to have a smaller aiming reference or aiming sight picture. And so you have more accurate shots, tighter groups, precision shots out to distance. And, who doesn't want that? Lastly, they're easy to maintain. They're easy to maintain. For example, if I don't like the red on this front sight post of this 19X, I can always switch it out for a green to match the rear, right? It's not hard to do that. I mean, all I gotta do is pop those out and then cut a new piece of green, put it in there, kind of melt it on both sides to give it that mushroom effect. Boom, I have a brand new green fiber optic front sight. So if you happen to carry a couple extra fibers in your range kit or whatever, you can definitely change them out whenever you want. And it's, again, cost effective because these little fiber optic rods are really cheap. All right, so let's talk about some cons of fiber optics, right? Fiber optics they're not self-illuminating. So they need artificial light to illuminate them. Hence why you have these perforations on the front and rear of my 19X Warhite ones, so that light can get in there, and then that light hits that rod and the fibers inside kind of disperse that light from end to end. And that's how the thing glows and gets really bright. But you need that artificial light, and you need a good amount, right? The more you have, the brighter it is. On a sunny day, your fiber optics will light up super bright, right? Overcast, not so much. But let's talk about maybe like low light, no light, right? If you're in a low light setting or a no light setting, your fiber optics are going to be almost non-existent, depending on where that light is coming from, how that light's hitting the fiber, how much of that light is getting absorbed and distributed into that rod will determine how much you can pick up those front or rear sights for your fiber optic sights. So that is definitely one con, that I need some kind of artificial light in order to illuminate these things. Otherwise, if they don't get illuminated, they basically just turn into a dark silhouette. Speaking of dark silhouettes, if you have a pistol light like I do on these two guns, then when I throw that light, right? When I throw that light out, let's say I'm in an alleyway and I throw that light out, that light is obviously being projected that way, but there's no light coming back to hit that fiber, and those fibers are not lighting up. So what happens? Again, I have a silhouette effect between my front side post and rear side aperture. However, if I'm in a CQB type environment, maybe I'm in my house, and I hit that light and all that light's bouncing off the walls, the ceiling, and somehow hitting that fiber, and now that fiber is picking up the light and distributing it, then yes, your fiber optics will light up, right? But their environment will definitely determine the amount of light that you get from your pistol, and your environment that you're in will determine how much of those fiber optics will actually light up for you. So those are the kind of pros and cons of different environmental scenarios, how your light's getting projected out from your pistol, if it's bouncing back and you're now catching backsplash and that backsplash is hitting your fibers. So those are kind of pros and cons there. More than likely, you're not going to get enough light into that fiber, and so it's going to turn into a black silhouette. Now, earlier I mentioned that these are easily interchangeable, right? You can change out fiber optics very easily. But with that, it comes the risk of improper installation, maybe from the factory or maybe from you. And then what happens is you're sitting on the range, you're shooting bang, 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 bang. All of a sudden, your fiber optic pops out of one end because you didn't have a good seal to keep it in its housing, right? So now you lost your fiber optic. That's why it's always good to have a couple extra rods on the range in your range bag or whatever in a little baggie so that you can just quickly pop one back in, okay? So that's one of the things to consider. The other one is that because fiber optic is basically plastic, there's a very good chance that it may, let me see if I can get this to zoom in, or focus. There's a very good chance that it may get dinged. You see how mine has some little dings and stuff on there? Pull it back a little bit. Those little dings, what that causes is that it causes for the fibers inside that rod to get damaged. And if they get damaged and bent and pushed in, they can't absorb that light and push it out to the ends. And so now my fiber is not as bright as it could be, even in a bright sunny day. So again, that wear and tear is something to pay attention to. If it gets too dinged up, in fact, this one here on the 17 is definitely due for a replacement, so that you can just optimize your fiber optic and not, sit there and have this thing be super faded, even though you have all this artificial light. All right, so let's get into night sights, because I have a few guns that have night sights, tritium that is, And I have two on the table right here that I want to show you. I have a couple more, but just so you guys can understand what tritium is and the purposes of it, I'll just use these two guns right here. So what I have here is another 19X, and then I have a 19, right? And they're both tritium. In fact, I'll show you this one first. This is my 19 that was done up by Jaeger. I have a Mariglo Pro eye dots on here. You guys can see that. Now let's get it to focus in on the back. You see that one tritium dot in the back? And then the one tritium dot in the front with an orange halo for daytime use. Now, what I really love about these sights is that during the day, I have that orange glow, so I can quickly pick it up just like a fiber would. I would a fiber, but at night, the orange glow, the orange halo goes away and the two tritium dots light up. And now I just have a 2-dot system. I just got to line them up and I'm good, right? On this one here, on this 19X, these are stock OEM Glock night sights, right? So these came with the 19X. There's those. You can see how they're white, right? But then at night, the white kind of goes away and the tritium glows. Now you can almost see like a greenish tint in these, right? But you notice how big these dots are? That's a pretty big front sight dot right there. All right, and so let's talk about just some pros and cons of night sights. All right, just in case you guys don't know, tritium is a radioactive substance. And it's very few companies. In fact, there's 3 companies that have the license to buy tritium and install it. And then everybody else kind of maybe pays a licensing fee or something like that. But there's 3 companies. Ameriglo is one, Trijicon is the other. I forget the other one, TrueGlow, I believe. Those are the 3 companies that have a contract with the government in order to buy tritium. And then they install tritium in their sites. Now, tritium is a radioactive substance, but it's cool because it's self-illuminating, and it's self-illuminating 24/7. And even during the day, even though you can't really see it, it's still kind of glowing. In fact, if I quickly darken this room, you'll be able to see these tritium sites glow, right? And what's great about tritium is that because it's self-illuminating, I never have to worry about going from daylight to low light. At low light, these things will just naturally glow on their own. How much they glow is kind of dependent on how dark it is. But also with tritium, what's cool about it is that you can charge it. You can kind of give it a boost. And if you take like a flashlight, just like this one here, and you just shine it for like good 30 seconds or whatever, on the tritium, it's going to give that tritium like a charge, almost like a battery charge. And now that tritium glows brighter. And they say that it lasts about 2 to 3 weeks or whatever. But even if it lasted a week or a couple of days, I'm good with that. You know what I mean? And I'm happy with that I can go from a day range and then go at night to wherever. And all of a sudden I got to draw my gun. And now this tritium is just glowing for me, So that's definitely a great thing there. So tritium is awesome because obviously it's ideal for low light, no light, right? It glows on its own, glow in the dark. And what that means is that even at night, when I pull my gun out, let's say I don't compromise myself, I don't give away my position, I don't use my pistol light. If I'm aiming in with my gun, those dots are glowing for me. So I have a aiming reference right off the get-go. I'm not sitting there searching for my silhouette, front sight post, and rear side aperture, trying to figure out which one's which. I have my dots. I have my 2-dot or 3-dot system, and I can aim in. Now, that's me being all sneaky ninja and stuff. But if I had to shine my light or if I have to give away my position, then yeah, maybe with my light, my tritium is going to kind of go away a little bit. Again, depending on how dark it is around me. But even let's go back to that alley situation. If I project my light down an alleyway, then there's no light coming back to hit that tritium. And so it's the reverse effect of how fibers work. The less light that I have around the tritium, the more the tritium glows. Versus if I was in a CQB environment and I'm busting out my light into a bedroom and all that light bounces off the walls and ceilings and comes back and hits that tritium, then that tritium doesn't glow as much, right? It doesn't glow as much, but what I do have is I have those white dots. So now the light is hitting the tritium glow goes away, but the white dots remain, and I still have an aiming reference for a CQB environment. So that's also a great thing. I mean, I prefer that over kind of fiber optics. All right, so let's talk about some of the cons of tritium night sights. Starting with the price. Tritium is not cheap, guys. Obviously, we said it's radioactive. There's only 3 companies that license it, and when they license it, they're not gonna be cheap with their products. It takes them probably who knows how much to put that little tritium in there, but they're expensive. So if fiber optics are like 60, 70, $80 a set, then for tritiums, it's almost double. I mean, you're easy looking at double the price, maybe $100 if you find a deal somewhere. But tritium sites are not cheap, so you're gonna spend money. But you get what you pay for, and knowing what you want, look at it as an investment, not so much, it's an extra $60 or whatever. It's an investment for a tool that may be life-saving. Okay. Now, it's great to have the white dots on my tritium, right? On my Jaeger gun, I had an orange dot. On my 19X, I had white dots. And it's great to have those because during the day, I have tritium glow. During the night, I have tritium glow. During the day, I have the white dots. However, what's kind of bad about having these big old dots that houses the tritium inside of it is that it's a huge front sight post. And so when I'm aiming in downrange, let's say I'm shooting at a 6-inch circle from 25 meters. When I'm aiming in on that 6-inch circle from 25 meters with both of these dots, that 6-inch circle completely disappears. I'm probably covering up a good 10 inches, or something like that. But the point is I can't see what I'm shooting at. So now I have to really get my sight alignment sight picture honed in and kind of guess about where I'm at, center mass on the target. I also have to obviously execute my fundamentals flawlessly in order to get that shot on target. And these are just the problems that you run into with tritium sights that also have that white or orange or green housing around them versus fiber optic, which has a little bit of metal housing, but mainly it's just that fiber that's smaller in diameter and width and height and everything. And so it doesn't obstruct your view as much. Now with tritium, tritium is pretty tough. It's a pretty tough material, right? It doesn't lose its glow almost ever, but it can be susceptible to damage. Like for example, it can get chipped. Tritium can get chipped. The tritium can actually fall out of the sight if it's hit just right. So it can pop out. Or if it gets chipped, I don't know how that affects its glow. I'm sure it's not like a circuit. It doesn't need the whole ring to glow. But if you chip a little piece out, I'm sure you'll still get that glow, but obviously it's not as bright. And now you have to sit here and replace your front sight post or rear sight aperture. And I'm pretty sure that can get pretty pricey, right? You're probably going to pay like half that 120, 130, 140, whatever you spent on a set to replace that one sight. So that's that. I mean, obviously, how realistic is it to chip a tritium sight somewhere? Not really, but you never know, man. Murphy's Law will say that it will happen to you eventually. We talked about this briefly, but it is a con. It should be stated that tritium, while it does have a 24/7 self-illuminating ability, it can fade, right? So over time, your tritium sight will fade. If you never hit it with a charge, if it doesn't get enough sunlight at some point, artificial light, then it does fade. It does fade. It's kind of like a dying battery. So when you hit it with that light, or if you leave it out on the range and during the day and that sun gets in there, it's getting that charge, that recharge, that boost. And so it kind of is like alive again, fresh battery. It's going to be working just fine for you. Nice, bright glow. But you have to remember to do that. All right, so let's talk about some considerations for both these sites, right? Really sites in general. And hopefully some of this information may help you with choosing which one is right for you. Okay, so according to the FBI, 70% of all crime and criminal interaction with citizens like us happens during low light, no light settings or environments or times. Criminals are not dumb. They don't want to hit you during the day. They don't want to, even if you can fight them off, they don't want to be seen by other people, and now they have a description out on, and so of course they're going to hide in the dark, in the darkest of places, probably like a choke point, probably a place that they kind of observed you, they know you're coming back to, and they just kind of stage, right? And criminals are not complete idiots, but if you kind of put yourself in their shoes and you kind of think like them a little bit, of course that will help you understand where you're kind of where you're prone to being attacked, or where you're kind of have the advantage or disadvantage. But again, that's situational mindset, situational awareness training, and having that mindset training to kind of live that lifestyle. But because 70% of all these attacks happen at night, you kind of have gives you, the teeter-totter effect or the scale of what's better, fiber optic or night sights. Okay, secondly, more and more LE agencies and other government agencies are going to tritium. They might have had fiber optics at one point. They probably had iron sights, just plain iron sights. But, with all the data that's happening, with all the stuff that's happening to law enforcement guys these days, they're getting a lot of data from that. And their commanders are making they're making a decision at their level that, my guys need tritium sights. Fiber optics are great, or regular iron sights are great, but they need something better for that low light, because these guys put their life on the line all the time. Most of them are out. They have that late shift, and you can't pick up a fiber optic sight, and you're definitely not even going to pick up your sights during a crazy firefight or something like that. But it's good to have something rather than nothing. And in fact, some LE agencies are going to red dots. They're allowing their guys to buy red dots. So, these are just considerations, but just understand that tritium and night sights are becoming more and more popular, and for a very good reason. Okay, so we said that fiber optics are great because they're small, tiny, not a lot of obstruction. So they give you a small sight picture, which equals more accurate and precise hits or whatever. But we have to ask ourselves, what is the reality? How realistic is it that we're going to find ourselves looking through our sights when we get into this gunfight, from 5, 7, 10, 15 meters away, right? None of us train. In fact, most of us don't train in environments where it's constant stress, constant pressures under time, speed, flawless execution. There's not a bad guy that's in the training with us, force on force type stuff. So when we train in kind of like a relaxed environment, controlled environment. And, for some of us, we try to self-induce some stress with timers and this and that, and maybe competition or whatever, but it's never going to be the same as when you find yourself in a life or death situation against a bad guy who also has a gun or a knife. And at that point, we're so kind of hard focused on the threat that when we go to present our gun, I would bet money that most of us don't look through our sights when we take at least that first shot. That first shot may be a point shot. 5 meters or 15 meters, more than likely, we're going to be taking a point shot right over our sights. And then at that point, depending on how much experience and discipline we have with our guns and training, then we may kind of pick up that front sight post and take all follow-on shots with a good sight picture, sight alignment. But that is a realistic question that you have to ask yourself. Will you actually be looking through your sights when you take a shot? And do fibers or tritium matter at that point? Okay, so for tritiums, right? For tritium sights or night sights, we say they're great at night. The FBI says 70% of all bad stuff happens at night. So why not have tritiums, right? But again, a realistic question is, you have to ask yourself, what kind of lifestyle do you live where you're always out at night by yourself, maybe in a shady neighborhood, maybe just prone to being attacked? If you live that kind of lifestyle, if you are Batman, then it's probably good to have tritium sights, right? It's probably good to have a bunch of other stuff that Batman has too. But if you don't live that kind of lifestyle, if you're hardly ever out at night, if I don't know, for whatever reason, you're by the time it sunsets, you're home and you don't go out. Do you really need tritium sights? Probably not, right? And at least when we go out and stuff at night, I get that, but you have to take into consideration your lifestyle, your pattern of life, not just for personal, but for work. And how often are you going to find yourself in a shady situation at night, right? That may be your life. And if that is the case, then obviously you may want to lean towards tritium because it's obviously in your favor. All right, so now that we've talked about all this, we have to ask ourselves, what is the best sight for me, right? But before we can answer that question, ask yourself this: what is the application of this gun, right? What are these guns for? What am I doing with these guns? Are they strictly range guns because I love sports shooting? I love content creation for Instagram. I am a competition shooter. All I do is spend my time on a flat range. I don't even carry EDC. You have to ask yourself these questions. What is the purpose of this gun? The purpose of this gun will kind of help you decide whether you need fiber optics or tritium night sights. If it is strictly a range gun, for example, this 17 with the compensator, that would be very hard for me to conceal, then yeah, I want fibers. I don't need tritium on this gun because this gun is going to stay on the range and it's never going to go with me anywhere else where I may have to use it as an EDC or self-defense gun, right? So that's just an easy question to ask yourself that'll also help you decide whether you need fiber optics or tritium, right? Again, your lifestyle, your pattern of life, business, love, personal, or whatever may also kind of determine whether you need fibers or tritium. So, these videos are great because people like myself, we give you lots of knowledge on fiber optics, night sights, considerations for both, pros and cons, all that good stuff. But nothing really makes a difference until you pick up one of these guns and you take it to the range and you get some time behind the sights, right? And we're talking about sights in this video, but that could mean anything, for trigger, grip, whatever. You need to get the time in. So like a fiber optic sight, if you have one, take it to the range, shoot it a lot during the day, which you probably already have, but how often have you shot your fiber optic range at night? And see how that feels for you. What is it doing to your actual sight alignment sight picture? What is it doing to your shots downrange at 5 meters and at 25 meters, right? See how that light, when you turn that light on, see how that affects the fiber optic. And again, you're aiming. These are all things you want to consider. Same thing with tritium though. If you have a tritium sight, or if you don't have a tritium sight, you still need to put some time in behind it to see what it means for you at night, light on, light off, during the day, right? That big old front sight post, taking that shot at 25 meters on a 6-inch plate, see how that feels. So again, all the firsthand experience is way more valuable than any video you watch of people like me telling you should go with this or the other. So I don't tell you which one to go with. I'll tell you the pros and cons of each, which one I prefer. But at the end, I leave it up to you to get some time in with both and then come up with your own conclusions. Lastly, we should talk about red dots, right? Iron sights are great. Fibers, tritium, they're all great. But why not just go to a red dot? I mean, red dots are easy, right? They're a little more expensive, but they give you the best of both worlds. I mean, whether it's daytime, I got that dot. Whether it's nighttime, I got that dot. I mean, I'm good, right? So why not just skip all this and just go to red dots? Well, here's the reason. A lot of instructors, including myself, will tell you that if you're a newer shooter or kind of a beginner or whatever, or not so experienced, don't let these Instagram shooters influence you with all their Gucci stuff. Put the time in behind iron sights. Really put the time in behind that stock trigger. Put the time in behind that stock gun. And the reason we say this is so that you can spend hours and hours or tens of 20 of whatever hours, thousands and thousands of rounds to really kind of make sure that you have got all of that down. You got sight alignment sight picture down, trigger prep, grip. You got all that stuff that you need down so that when you eventually graduate to aftermarket parts and enhancement parts, you can actually appreciate what these parts are doing for you. When you put all this time in with all these stock parts and you start to slowly graduate to that $270 trigger, to that heavy tungsten guide rod, to that red dot, to those really cool sights, only then will you really appreciate what those parts are doing for you. Okay, that's one factor. The other factor is that let's say you now have a Gucci gun. You've been shooting for years, but you actually did it the right way. You spent hours and hours and thousands of rounds playing or shooting that stock gun, but now you've got to a Gucci gun because that is where you should be in your progression. For whatever reason, when you pick up that next stock gun, or when you purchase a new stock gun, none of that should feel like alien to you. None of it should be like, oh man, this stock gun is so weird and I don't know if I can shoot this. And when you shoot it, you're like, ooh, that was really bad. That's probably because you didn't put enough time in with your first stock gun in the first place, right? You just went out and bought $3,000 worth of aftermarket parts because all your favorite Instagram shooters are saying, ooh, you should buy this and buy that and look at my cool videos. And you just cheated yourself. Out of all that time to get all that stuff down, you cheated yourself. And now when your Gucci gun gets taken away from you, or somebody gives you a stock gun and says, here, shoot this, you're like, oh man, that doesn't really feel weird. It only doesn't, it feels weird or whatever, because you cheated yourself in the first place. You didn't put the time in. You didn't get there through natural progression. You didn't put the hard work in, right? So the red dots are great. In this case, we're talking about red dots. Red dots are great, but there's some considerations for red dots. First of all, they're battery operated. They're electronic, but let's say like you're at the day range and you're shooting, you're like, yeah, my red dot's awesome. I got it all the way bright because the sun's so bright, but I can see those targets. I'm just plinking, right? My shot groups are tight. Holster up, go home, whatever. Now that's let's say it's your EDC gun, because why not? I mean, if you have a red dot, it might as well be, both guns, unless it's something super large like that 17 I have. But for God forbid you have to draw your gun with your red dot, and it's still a brightest setting because you're at the range, and now all you see is red. Your whole view pane is just flooded with red because you forgot to take it down to a dimmer setting to operate at night. And these are just small disciplines, but it's also a consideration if you are going to buy a red dot. And don't forget that red dot can fail on you. That battery will die on you when you least expect it. That's just the way it is. So even though red dots are standalone optics meant to not be shot with your back or with your iron sights, it's good to have backup iron sights in case that red dot dies on you, right? Because of the battery. Or in case it starts flickering on you because your mill job on your slide was crap and your red dot doesn't sit on there properly. And so the battery housing is loose and that battery is just kind of bouncing up and down. So your red dot's flickering. You can fall back on your backups now. Whether you have tritium or fiber optic, don't care, but at least you have backups. Otherwise, if you just have a red dot with no backup irons and that thing dies on you, what are you going to do? Kentucky windage? Good luck. Well, at least with those backups, you can fall right back to those backups. But you can fall back to those backups with confidence. You know why? Because you put all that time in with iron sights in the first place to really get proficient with them, so that now when you go to a red dot, you're like, dude, this is awesome. It's so much easier. It's like cheating. But if I ever had to fall back to my irons, boom, it's like another day at the range because I put all this work in. So red dots are great. And, I mentioned earlier that some LEs are going to it, and they're great. Obviously, I would love for all you guys to eventually go to red dot, but please put in the time with your stock gun, stock trigger, stock sight, stock whatever, stock everything. Put in the time, slowly graduate to that enhancement part so that you can really appreciate the part and what it does for you, but also your own hard work of getting there. All right, so that's all I got, guys. I hope that this video was helpful to you. I know it's a longer one. I apologize. I tend to ramble on all the time. I mean, that's just what I do. But I hope that nonetheless, the information was very valuable. I hope that it helps you in the deciding factors of whether you want a fiber optic or a tritium night sight for your gun. You have a lot of considerations to think about. You have the pros and cons of each. And you should be in good hands. But if, for whatever reason, if you have a question, just reach out, DM me, message me, email. You can comment in the comment section. That way everybody can learn. I may have missed something. For me, it's all up here, but my memory is going to shit. So I could have forgot something. But like any other video, I would love for you guys to like, comment, share this video for others to see. Also subscribe to my YouTube channel. Or the Facebook or wherever, just follow me, right? I tend to kind of post these everywhere. But if that's all I got, and I will see you guys next time. Cheers.